By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly where your Google Ads dollars are leaking inside of your company. And this is Google Ads, your LSA, and really all paid ads, but we are going to be focused on Google Ads specifically because 99% of the time when I am auditing waterproofing, foundation, crawl space companies that are running Google Ads, it is not the ads themselves that are usually causing the issue. Don't get me wrong, they can sometimes, but it is 9 times out of 10 the bucket, aka the systems after the ads, after the leads click on the ads, opt in, how are these leads being contacted, converted, tracked, everything of that sort. That is what's causing the biggest problems. And so if your Google Ads are not printing jobs, or you're seeing like $500-600 cost per estimate, or even higher, I see some guys saying $1,000 cost per estimate, $1,200 cost per estimate, stop blaming Google, because we've audited dozens of waterproofing companies this year, and the leak is almost never the ad problem itself, but like I said, the system's after the fact. So at the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly where your ads dollars are leaking inside of Google Ads and LSA, and the specific fix at each stage that turns the wasted ad spend into booked jobs for your company. And so every dollar you lose on Google leaks at usually one of 5 stages, and Google is only stage 1. And so let's say you're Google, right? Let's say you're, for your purposes here, let's say you're spending 10 grand a month on Google Ads, you're getting about $10 cost per click. So you're getting 1,000 clicks on your Google Ads. And then you're going to be seeing roughly, let's say, 40 leads because maybe you have a page problem, right? Your landing page is not set up, or we see it all the time where they're sending just their homepage of their website or something like that, which is never going to convert. And a lot of the times it's going to be converting at like a 1 to 2% rate, but here we're being a little considerate and giving you 4%. And so what we see here, let's say we get 40 leads that opt in, and then 73% of leads never get called. And this is not a number I'm just pulling out of nowhere. This is from InsideSales.com. This is across thousands of companies across the states. I believe it's actually about 4,000 companies across the states where these numbers are picked. All companies doing over $1 million a year. And 73% of leads never get called at all. So if we use that number, and believe me, I've audited a lot of companies where some I see it's higher than 73. And so let's say out of those 40 leads that come through, only 11 get actually contacted. And then another stat, which is, I'm not pulling it out of nowhere, this one's from Harvard Business Studies, is 44% of sales reps give up after only the first follow-up, give up on 44% of leads after only the first contact point or the first follow-up, which is leading to 5 booked estimates. And typically, we'll use a 40% close rate from Google Ads, which is, fairly standard. We're looking at 2 closed jobs, which is just pathetic out of 40 leads, right? That is absolutely terrible. And you can see it's not because of the ad itself, because you see here we got 1,000 clicks. So, that the Google is doing its job. The ad is doing its job itself. And so here, first thing is the landing page is converting at a terrible rate. We want to be seeing 8 to 12% for the most part, usually 10 to 12%, even sometimes a little higher from the clicks, which imagine, let's say 10%, that's 100, right? And then 73% of leads never getting called is insane. For us, every single lead is getting called. Every single lead, you are not missing one. And so let's say out of this, and 73% instead of them never getting called, we're calling every single lead. Typically, we're seeing anywhere from 40 to 75% lead to booking rate. For most part, Google Ads is going to be a little higher, so I'm going to use 75. Now we have 30 leads contacted and 30 estimates booked because we're using about a 75% lead to booking rate. And here, these fall into the same bucket, where as long as you have a setter whose sole job is calling every single lead the second they come through and following up them every single day for weeks, getting them texts, they're getting emails for a year plus, and they're staying inside the ecosystem, these will be fixed automatically, and that's how we're able to see typically anywhere from a 50 to 60, 70, even upwards of 80, 85% lead to booking rate. So if we use 75 for this example, we're looking at 30 estimates booked, and if we use the same close rate being 40%, we're looking at, what is that? 12 estimates, what are we looking at there? 18 estimates closed. So you can see the big difference by not changing anything in the ad itself, but just the follow-up process after the fact and the speed to lead. You're getting 9 times more estimates booked. Again, this is a hypothetical, but these numbers are not far-fetched. And so the thing is, the bottom line is you didn't buy 1,000 clicks, you only bought 2 jobs if you don't have these systems. And 4 to 5 leaks in this pipeline are happening after the fact, where Google has already handed you the click and you're just not capitalizing on it properly. And this is not something that is unique to companies doing under $1 million a year. A lot of companies come to us in 5, 8, 10, 12 million a year that we see, and their systems are an absolute mess, and they do not have any of this. And little do they know, if they just implemented one dialer who they're paying a couple $1,000 a month max, then it would solve all of their problems. Now, leak number 1, 53% of your mobile clicks bounce before your page even loads, because a lot of people are sending them to their homepage or non-city specific service pages, and you are just going to see a massive drop off if the site is not optimized, and we see this all the time as well. This is a Google mobile research. These are, again, not numbers I'm pulling out of nowhere. 53% of mobile visitors abandon pages that take longer than 3 seconds to load. That is why every time we build a website, we see, okay, what is the page load speed? Because if it is above 3 seconds, we are going to see a massive drop off of leads. And now, 3 times higher conversion for pages loading in 1 second versus 5 seconds. And see, a lot of people think the ad is the biggest thing. The ad is only important in terms of getting the click, building the intrigue to get the person to click. Everything after the fact is very much ignored by a lot of contractors because of the fact that they just aren't aware of it. And typically 4 to 6% is the average landing page conversion. Top 10% are usually hitting 11% plus. And so 4 to 6% is very typical, right? Which is why we use the 4% number up here when breaking this down. But when optimized, you want to be seeing a 10, 11, 12, 15% conversion rate, and that puts you in a very, very profitable position. If your Google ads point to your homepage and it loads in 5+ seconds, you're paying Google to send traffic to a essentially closed door. And so you need to have a dedicated fast landing page per service with the offer, one form for each city specifically that you target. And so now leak number 2 is cutting your form from 11 fields to 4 or 5 max. This can massively increase your conversion as well, because a lot of people think that it's very black and white, where, okay, the more qualifiers you have, the more qualified your leads are going to be. But that is not necessarily the case. You need to find the perfect middle ground between having the right amount of qualifiers to qualify leads and really filter out those crappy tire kickers, but also not have too many fields to where you're having way too much friction to where nobody wants to spend 20 minutes filling out 11, 12 fields, asking question after question, right? Where, especially when, in this case, you can have 4 or 5 fields and then have somebody call the lead when they actually opt in and you have their information to get the rest of the info that you need. There's no reason to have so much friction on your landing page or your opt-in form or your lead form that you're just disqualifying all these leads that could be very good quality potential traffic because you're just throwing so many unnecessary questions at them. So a lot of the times you'll see things like name, email, phone number, address, city, state, zip code, service type, service type, time frame, budget, how did you hear about us? All these types of things that are just going to be causing so much friction and aren't necessary on the lead form. The only things you really need: name, phone, potentially email, address, and the problem that they're having. That is it, maximum. Everything else can be asked on the phone when they opt in. The most important thing is getting them to opt in so you have their information, they're in your CRM, you can continue nurturing them, and you can finally have somebody call them. And then on the phone, you can ask all these other things about the time frame, how long they've been dealing with this, all that other stuff that doesn't need to be brought up on the form because it's irrelevant. You knowing that stuff beforehand makes zero difference to you in terms of them opting in, right? You just want the lead. That is the most important thing, but you also want to have the right amount of friction to really kick out those tire kickers that are not the good quality leads. Other things that are slept on is you want to make sure that your form is above the fold. What does above the fold mean? Is when you open the landing page, you do not need to scroll down at all to see the form. The form is there. You don't want to have a ton of stuff above it. You want to have a headline, your form. That is it. Very simple. Now, the bottom line is you can have the same spend, same Google campaign, doubled pipeline just from improving your form and cutting out all these unnecessary qualifying questions that you can just ask on the phone anyway. Leak number 3 is the speed to lead. This is without a doubt the most prevalent issue that we see across pretty much every single business we've ever spoken to and ever worked with, is calling leads quickly. You need to be calling leads in under 5 minutes. That makes you 21 times more likely to qualify the lead, and most companies take 42 hours on average. And again, these numbers seem crazy, but I'm not pulling these out of nowhere. These are from Harvard Business Study directly, who has surveyed thousands of businesses across the country, and this is what we are seeing. If you are calling a lead in under 1 minute, which is not a difficult thing to do, You just need to have somebody whose sole job is calling those leads. You can't expect to be the one calling those leads when you're doing the estimates. You're out on the job site. If you're in somebody's crawl space, you're not going to be calling a lead as soon as they opt in, so you need to have somebody who's responsible for that, which is why with every business we work with, we place a rep whose sole job is calling these leads, because that is a full-time job. If you are getting 10 leads a day, you may only have 10 leads to call that first day, but in a week, you now have 70 leads that you need to be calling. That's a lot of dials and a lot of conversations to have, to where you need to have somebody whose sole focus is that, or you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. If you call a lead in under 1 minute, it increases your chance for conversion by 391%. 391%. That is ridiculous, and that is not something that takes a ton of extra money. That is not something that takes a ton of extra resources. It is something that anybody can do. You just need to dial them and have somebody there to be able to do it. The industry average response time is 42 hours, which is just ridiculous. This is an emergency service. If somebody's basement is leaking and it takes 42 hours to get to the lead, they are already gone to somebody else, most likely Groundworks or Basement Systems, because they have people on standby calling all hours of the day, day or night, weekend or weekday, and so they're going to take that lead from you if you don't have somebody to do it. Leak number 4 is the follow-up. 44% of your team gives up after one call, one follow-up, but 80% of closes need 5+ follow-ups. Do you see the conundrum there? If 80% of closes need 5+ follow-ups, but 44% of leads are only followed up with once, what does that mean? That means you are missing out on a shit ton of money for your company, again, by simply placing a rep whose sole job is dialing leads immediately and following up with them every single day. You need to have texts, you need to have emails going out to them, you need to have multiple touch points across the board, because not only is it important to get to the speed to lead, have the follow-ups in place, but if a lead comes through and they are not qualified immediately, that does not mean in 3 months, in 6 months, they're still going to be unqualified. We see all the time where a lead might be unqualified now, and in 6 months, they've still been getting texts, they've still been getting emails from the company, so they end up booking an estimate and closing for a 20, 30K job. You see it all the time where if you don't have the follow-ups, you don't have the systems in place, that lead would have disappeared from your ecosystem altogether, and they would have went to somebody else. Now, 95% of leads that ever convert are reached by the 6th call attempt. And so you would see inside of our CRM where our reps are placed for every business we work with, they are dialing the leads twice as soon as that lead comes in within 60 seconds. Later that day, 2 more times. That evening, 2 more times. And if they still don't answer, okay, we call them the next morning. They're still getting texts. They're still getting emails. And people think that it is too aggressive, too salesy to push that hard. These people filled out the form. They would not have filled out that form if they did not want somebody to reach out to them. So you are doing them a disservice if you are not hammering them, trying to get in contact with them, because they filled out the form because they have a problem that they need you to solve, and you're being a bit ignorant if you think that it's too salesy or too pushy to call these leads multiple times every day to get a hold of them, because they filled out your form for a reason. They need you to do a service for them, and you're the one who does that, so freaking call them. Now, number 5. If you can't tell Google which clicks became jobs, it will keep buying the wrong clicks over and over again. And this is, again, something we see all the time because it's very reliant on the systems, the tracking, and everything being set up properly. And it's not a knock against contractors, but you guys are amazing at the service that you guys provide, but usually not the most tech savvy people, which is why the tracking systems are usually a big hole in a lot of the businesses, because a lot of this is tech related, a lot of automations, a lot of stuff like that. And so what most shops are doing with Google and what most companies are doing is the form fill equals a conversion, that's it. Whereas that's not necessarily the case, because you have no idea which keyword produced that estimate. You have no idea which keyword produced a closed job. Smart bidding optimizes towards form fillers in this case, because that's what you're marketing as a conversion instead of actual customers, or at least booked estimates. So what the algorithm actually needs is offline conversions imported from your CRM, whatever that may be, go high level, jobber, service type, whatever. Booked estimate, showed estimate, and signed contract all as separate events or closed job. Because in that case, it will obviously be able to optimize more for the higher quality conversions, because leads don't mean anything if they're not closing, right? Closed jobs are the most important events that we want to be targeting, right? Because I'm assuming you want more closed jobs than you do just leads, right? And so revenue value is passed back to Google per closed job, and now Google bids towards jobs, not just lead flow. And this is the fix that really nobody is doing, and it's one of the single biggest levers on Google performance once the first 4 leaks are patched, of course. This is not going to make a difference if you don't have any of those other things, the speed to lead, the follow-ups, all of that stuff taken care of. That is the most important, and that will a lot of the times 50% increase, even double, 200% increase what you were already doing just by having somebody who calls leads immediately and follows up with them aggressively. And then you can start to worry about these other things like the conversion events in Google, which are, a factor that plays a part, don't get me wrong, but it's not the lowest hanging fruit. Now, you patch all 5 leaks, and the same amount of spend that you're putting in will see a massive increase. And so just some numbers that we see across the board here, because every single business that we work with, we place a rep. We're managing the ads, we're placing a rep who's dialing, speed to lead under 60 seconds and following up aggressively. This is why clients are able to spend $22,000 on ads and get $420,000 out of it. This is why they're able to spend $3,000 on ads and get 68 grand in the first month, 22x return, almost a 19x return. And this is not doing anything crazy. This is doing exactly what I said in this video here, exactly what I broke down. The order matters, okay? Fix the bucket in this order or you'll keep paying Google to fill a leaky bucket, which is the last thing you want to do. Now, first is the landing page form. Because if you don't have lead flow coming through, speed to lead doesn't matter. Because if you have no leads to call, speed to lead is irrelevant, right? So fix the landing page form first. Sub 3 second load time, 4 fields, name, email, phone number, address, and what is the job they're looking for. That is it. And then 2, speed to lead. You need to have an SMS, a text, an email that fire within 10 seconds of the lead coming through, and a rep who's calling that lead immediately. Follow-up, you need to have at least 8 touch points over 14 days, and that is specifically just talking about calls. Like I said, why are we able to get such a high booking rate for our clients? Because our setters will be calling these leads 3 times the first day, and every time they call, they double dial. A double dial is you call a lead, if they don't answer, you call them again immediately. Some people have do not disturb on, so it goes right to voicemail. Your pickup rate will double if you do that. So when we're calling somebody, when I say we call somebody, we're double dialing every single time. So it's 2 calls. Leads come through, we're calling them 3 times the first day, 3 times the second day, and then periodically every day for the next week or so. They're getting texts, they're getting emails every single day for about the next year or so. And that might seem crazy, but that is how we get such good results. Number 4 is offline conversion events, pushing for bookings, showed estimates, and closes. And then you can optimize the ads. Once you have all these other things in place, now you actually have real data, real concrete numbers to look at from your ads, and now you can start to really optimize the ads themselves, because everybody thinks it's the ads, but it's 99% of the time the systems. Now look, if you want us to run this exact audit on your business, break down all of this inside of your Google account, show you exactly what you need to be doing, where the leaks are in every stage, where every dollar is going, what it's bringing you back, and put the systems in place that we just went through in this video. There's a link in the description somewhere below. If you want to book a call with us, we'll break that down with you on call. If not, no problem. Use what we said in this video, implement it yourself, and I promise you will see a massive increase in the amount of leads, estimates, and closed jobs coming through to the company.